Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for your time and your attention when we met last week and started working on the Quality Assurance and Performance Improvement Program, i.e. the Gold Quality Award Program. It can be a lot. I know, and I know that sometimes I try to fit so much in that it can almost be like drinking from a fire hose. But I will also add that once I received your first breakdown of your first QAPI process, which is how do you listen to current employees, I was like, oh no, I missed a couple of things that I should have went over with you. So I apologize, but I got to say that you're on the right track. I got what you have. Let me just look at it. So how do you listen to your current patients and residents? And you wrote actively listening, eye contact, patients with residents, giving them time, ask questions, repeat questions back to residents. These are all really great. And then you said daily we have management. I don't know what management does. Quarterly you have care plans. Daily you have therapy. And then weekly and when needed, you have dietary, and you follow up within 3 days if there is a concern. Okay. These are all really great. These are really great starters, but each one of these can have its own process. And so let me back up and actually let me explain process mapping so that I'm going to pull that up right here. Okay, so this is an example of a process map. And this is just how to hire a new employee. I actually have one on how to listen to a resident, but let's start here because I think this might be the easiest way to start. So how do you hire a new employee? We can break it down into 4 basic steps. We receive an application, we interview that applicant, we do reference checks or background checks, and then we contact the applicant. And here at the end, they are hired or they're not hired, right? They pass or they don't pass the whole process. This is a very straightforward, easy to understand. You go from step number 1 to step number 2 to step number 3. You see that you can't interview an applicant before you receive an application, obviously, right? So there is a pattern. There is a step 1, then step 2, then step 3, then step 4. Okay, but each one of these processes have, as you can imagine, multiple processes under them. For example, let me just break it down even further. Once we receive the application, the question is, what do we do? Well, the first thing that we do is we check to make sure the information is accurate. Most notably, I don't know if you know this, but on an application, the number one thing or the number 2 things that we want above everything else on an application is we want them to answer the question, have you been criminally convicted of anything? That's the first thing we want you. We want you to check the box. I have, I haven't. And then I want your signature on that application. Your answer plus signature has to be verifiable the truth, because as we go through and as I'm explaining this to somebody about hiring an employee, I explain to them that I have to, here in the state of New York, it might be the same in Tennessee, I have to offer them a job before I do a background check. I am not allowed to do a background check here in the state of New York on a potential employee unless I have offered them a job and they have accepted it. I offer them a job conditionally. On the condition that you pass a background check, we'd love to have you work for us. Okay, so that is why we need the application to say, I've been criminally convicted or I haven't been. Because if you have been criminally convicted, let's say of stealing drugs, right? I'm not going to make an offer. And therefore, I'm not going to waste my time, money, resources on submitting a background check. Does that make sense? So I need you to declare whether you've had some legal issues in the past or you don't. And I need you to sign that document. Those are the 2 most important things on an application that we need here in New York in order for us to go forward. I digress. Let me just keep going. I sometimes fall down a rabbit hole, and that's what I mean. Like, I sometimes give it to you like a fire hose, and You're like, could you just stick on one topic? I'm trying. I am trying. Okay. So once we check to make sure all the information is accurate, then we give it to the hiring manager. Now, this is interesting. So this 1.1 is its own process. This is 1.2 is its own process. Schedule an interview, its own process. The question is always, well, how do we check for important information? What are we looking for? How do we give it to the hiring manager? Do you put it in their mailbox? How do I even know who the hiring manager is, right? Like, obviously, if they say, hey, I'm applying to dietary, then I know to go to the dietary manager. If they're applying for nursing, I know to give it to the nursing manager, right? But then how do I give it to them? Do I put it in their mailbox? Do I go bring it to them? Do I email them a copy? What do I do? Schedule an interview. Who schedules the interview? Well, the hiring manager is the one who schedules the interview. How do they do that? Do they send out an email? Do they do a phone call? Is it an online application process? Each one of these, I'm just trying to show you, is its own process. Step number 2, we start the interview. Well, what do we do in the interview? Process number 1 is we review their past experiences, what they've done, where they've done it. We describe the job. This is what the job is going to be. You're going to be working in dietary. You're going to be working in housekeeping. You're going to be working in nursing, whatever. And then we make an offer. How do you make an offer? Do you talk about money? Do you talk about hours? Do you talk about benefits? Do you talk about health insurance? What is part of the offer, right? Like, you can see how each one of these, again, are its own process. Step number 3, reference checks. Well, the first thing we do is submit a background check. Then we call references, and then we submit a license check. Well, how do you submit a background check? When you call references, what do you say? What do you ask? Who do you ask to talk to? What information are you looking for? What information do they legally are not allowed to give? And what information are they legally allowed to give? That'll help. If you know that, it'll help you know whether or not what questions to ask. For example, it is illegal for a past employer to call a future employer and say, don't hire them. It's illegal. You can't do it. It's defamation. However, you'll get a hint when you say, can you give us a reference? And the company says, our policy is only to let you know that they started working here in May of 2023 and they stopped working here in December of 2024. Like, okay, so they worked there for nearly 2 years. Yes, okay. So let me ask you this question, because this is the type of organization that's like, you know what, we've been sued too many times for defamation. We're not going to give away anything. Like, would you hire them again? And you're like, oh, well, I can answer that question. I'm legally allowed to answer that question. No, I would not hire them again. Good, that's all I need to know, right? Or, yes, I would love to hire them again. That's great. I want to hear that too, right? Again, if you don't know how to call references or what to be asking for, that's why this is, again, its own process. And it could be very helpful to break this process down for the person who may be, for the first time, calling a reference. Check licenses. How do you check licenses? Well, how do you log on? What's the email and the password and all that stuff, right? If everything comes back, we contact the applicant and we remake the offer. We're like, hey, good news. References were great. Background was great. License is great. Would love to schedule you for orientation. Well, how do you schedule somebody for orientation? For us, we have a staff coordinator who does our orientation, and they do orientation every 2 weeks. It's what we call GO, or our general orientation. And so we reach out to them and say, hey, we have 2 CNAs that would like to get into the next orientation class. Do you have room? That's an important question, because our staff coordinator, we only have a certain number of seats. I think the number is 8. I think we only have 8 people. I'm pretty sure it was just 8 people. And, that could be a nightmare, because that's not a lot of people for orientation, especially if you have 4 nurses, 2 dietary, and 3 housekeepers who want to come in. We've got to make the decision, if we have more than 8, who are we going to have to schedule later? And obviously we always put it on housekeeper. Housekeeper, we're going to push you off, or dietary, we'll push you. We never push nursing off, right? So if we have 8 CNAs coming in for an interview and we only have 8 spots, guess who's getting all 8 spots? The 8 CNAs. Anyway. It's a process. Scheduling orientation is in itself its own process. And of course, you know that scheduling anybody is a process. So what does that process look like? So I said all of this to say, well, I said all this and I could have just went right to the how to listen to a resident, because again, I have the same kind of a process for listening to resident, but I kind of want to leave that alone because you're working on that. I don't want to give it to you. Obviously mine's different than yours. I'll go over it. It doesn't matter. Think about it like this now. Now that we have taken and we've brainstormed initially, we're like, okay, how do we hire an employee? We're like, okay, so the first thing we do is once we get an application, we interview the applicant, then we check references, and we make the offer, and we hire somebody. That's it. We're like, okay, can we break down each one of those processes? And we're like, sure. So, okay, so once we receive the application, the first thing we want to do is make sure the information is accurate. This is important because we don't want to give the application to the hiring manager and have the hiring manager screen the application. Maybe you do. Maybe you get an application, maybe you don't screen it at all. Maybe it's your process to just hand it to the hiring manager, let them do their own screening. Okay, maybe. We don't. We have somebody screen it, the person who takes the application in, like the receptionist, who they're the ones who get all the applications. We train them on how to scan an application and make sure it's accurate. Generally, we want them to scan it, by the way, before the applicant leaves, right? So there's somebody, and I know we're getting an awful lot more email applications at this point, but just think, if somebody comes in and they're like, hey, I would like an application. I'm like, great, here, sit down over there and fill it out. And they come back and they hand it to you. It would be the best opportune time for the person that's getting the application, i.e. the receptionist, to go, let me just look it over real quick. Yes, I see. I'm not looking for, is your information any good? I'm looking for, is the application filled out? Do I see this box checked, that box checked? Is there a signature at the bottom? Is there an address? Is there a phone number? Right? Like, before you leave, let me just make sure it's good. Okay, great. I'll give it to the hiring manager. My point. And then the hiring manager then schedules the interview based on their availability, right? And we just go on and on and on. Again, the reason that I'm breaking it down like this is because ultimately what we want is we want you to take this map. This is just a map, right? This is just a roadmap like we did in the beginning. And I want you to give me the turn by turn instructions. And what I want you to think about is when you're doing turn-by-turn instructions, just like if you were asking somebody to go pick your kid up at the school or to go grab you a coffee or come to your house, you'd have to go, okay, take a left on Elm, and then when you get to the end, there's going to be a T in the road, take a right on Walnut, and then past Walnut, you would have to turn-by-turn instructions, except in this case, you're doing two things. One, you want to be able to provide a step-by-step instruction manual for the person coming in who's hiring an employee, right? And for the quality, for the Gold Quality Award program, you want to start a little sentence starter. And I'll send you a link to a bunch of sentence starters so that you have it. But all the sentence starters, most of the sentence starters are simply this: senior leaders. And then you're going to put the process in here, right? So senior leaders hire employees. All right, if I could spell employees, that would be amazing, right? Hire employees by or through or with. Right? You're going to choose your transition word. The senior leaders hire employees by first, that's my number one. First, once we receive an app, we check for accuracy. Then we give, I'm just trying to write super fast to be stupid. Accuracy, then, and then, and then, and then, until we hire the employee. And you're giving us this step-by-step instruction, like senior leaders hire employees by first, once we receive an application, we check to make sure the information is accurate. and filled out. Then we give it to the hiring manager. The hiring manager then schedules an interview. And then in that interview, the hiring manager reviews all the past experience with the applicant. They describe the job, what it's going to be like, what the hours are, what the atmosphere is like, what the culture of our organization is. And then if we like them and they like us, we make a job offer. And if they accept the job offer, we submit a background check. We call references and we check to make sure that their license status is in good order. If all that comes back really well, then we call the applicant, we contact them, we remake the offer, say, good news, can't wait to have you start working with us. We schedule them for orientation, and then once orientation is over, we put them on the schedule. I just took the process map and put it in what we call, in the quality award genre, we call it prose. We call it prose. We put it in sentence format, which is what we want. And not only do we want it in sentence format for the quality award program, but you want it in sentence format for your in-services. Because ultimately, regardless of who you have right now as a hiring manager for whatever department, in some way distant time down in the future, you're probably going to have a new manager in some new position where you're going to have to explain to them how to hire a new employee. And that requires an in-service. That requires a mapping. That requires a sit down and go, hey, these are the turn-by-turn instructions on how to hire an employee. Now, when we talk about listening to a resident, and this is formal, so there's formal and there's informal processes when it comes to, I thought I had a coffee, when it comes to, talking to myself, when it comes to listening to a resident. I love that you all said that you all practice active listening, that you all make eye contact, that you are patient with residents and give them time, and you ask good questions and you repeat questions back to the resident to ensure that you get all that information. That is really, really great. But that speaks more to the culture of your organization than it does the actual formal process of listening to a resident. So then you said we have management daily. Is it management rounding daily? I'm not really sure. You have care plans quarterly. You have therapy daily. Again, the great thing about these headlines is they're like this. Upon admission, imagine if I just wrote management. And then I wrote care plan. Well, care plans are over here. I already have care plans written down. Therapy. And dietary. Well, you didn't have resident council written down, but I'm sure you have resident council as well, right? So then, what does management look like? Well, what is the step-by-step process? If we were to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like what are the steps that management take? What are the steps that rehabilitation takes? What are the steps that dietary take? What are the steps in a care plan meeting? Does that make sense? I broke it down. So I too started with the headings and then said, okay, well, upon admission, okay. First, we meet with residents and family at the hospital prior to discharge. Our communication, the way we listen to residents, and we're talking about, listen, like, why even listen to a resident, right? Like, I'm not being facetious. I'm like, why listen to them? That's not what I mean. I mean, we're listening to actively get information. We're going to get their likes, their dislikes. We're going to find out about their ailments, about their condition, about the mobility restrictions, about their volume, whether they need glasses, whether they need equipment, whether they need a high load bed or an air mattress or an O2 tank or right, like an O2 concentrator, whatever. Like that's why we want to listen to them prior to admission. So that step number 1 is we want to get as much information. We want to introduce ourselves and listen to them before they even got here. Number 2, we want to have all of our department heads, and you all know this about me and my flower. Here, I'll bring my little flower. And this is the vase that these are the type of vases that we use for housekeeping to dictate. And of course, it's a bigger vase for when it has all the flowers in it. But you all know that we are big fans of having all of our department heads meet with the residents and family members upon admission. And and again, it's dietary activities, rehab. We want everybody to meet with them. And then number 2 is we have a 72-hour post-admission meeting. And this is where we check in with residents, ask about services, comfort, if they have any questions, right? So we're just, how are you? How are things? You're saying kind of the same thing in your follow-up. Step number 3, resident council. On a monthly basis, we provide space and communication, travel, food, communication. This is what they're talking about. Somebody takes minutes. And they go over them with us. And then step number 4, quarterly care plan meetings. See, once we have, this is upon admission, that's a timeline, 72 hours timeline, monthly timeline, quarterly timeline. That's important because these are systematic. These are repeatable meetings. And then, so quarterly, we schedule meetings with the residents, care plan team, and discuss any ongoing issues with the resident. Now, each one of these, meet with family at hospital, this is its own process. And if we wanted to, we could map out the 3, 4, 5 steps on how to meet with a resident and a family member at the hospital. What questions to ask, what not to ask, how to approach, how to go up, how to schedule an appointment. Do you physically go? Do you call? Is it a video call? Like, what is the process for meeting with a resident and family members prior to admission? Then have all the department heads meet your new admission and your family member. How do they do that? Again, we do it with a flower. We ensure that every one of our managers goes, but we couldn't stop there. We had to create a little index card that had everything that each one of the department heads were going to go over. Maintenance goes over the safety committee thing. They go over how to fill out or how to let anybody know if you have a water leaking issue or a light bulb is out or your television, the batteries in the remote's not working. You know what I mean? Like all these little things that maintenance will presumably be taking care of. Where is the maintenance logbook? How do they get information into that maintenance logbook? How do they know, right? Like, so we had to come up with this here is times 12 processes. Why 12? Because we have 12 department heads. We have 12 people we want to go in and meet with the family member or the new resident upon admission within that first 72-hour window. So we had to create 12 more processes spelling out each way. Anyway, my point is, I know I'm going long-winded here just to kind of say the same thing. If I were to put this in prose and you were to ask me how do you listen to residents, I would say, senior leaders listen to residents. This is the process, right? The process we're talking about is listening to residents. Listening to residents by or through or whatever, right? Through during admission, we have one-on-one meetings prior to the admission at the hospital. Then, once they get into the home, every one of our department heads meets with the resident and or family member within the first 72 hours to answer all questions, give them a brief rundown of the department and what their responsibility is, and give them communication methods on how they can get a hold of us. Then, we do a 72-hour check-in. That's actually the same kind of thing. 72-hour check-in. Then we have a monthly resident council meeting, talk about the resident council meeting, and we have a quarterly care plan meeting. Then, in addition, we teach all of our employees and all managers practice active listening. We ensuring that we make eye contact and that we are patient with residents, giving them time, asking questions, and making sure that we get the question right by constantly repeating back the question to residents, asking for clarity. Now we've fully answered the question, and we could write this up as an in-service because anybody that you hire, whether it's a CNA, a housekeeper, or a new manager, all needs to know what your process is for listening to a resident. Now, I said all of that, and I'm going to try to wrap this up within the next 5 minutes so it's not, all right, it's a 30-minute video, but I apologize. There's a before and after that we have to talk about, okay? There's a before and after. And this before and after is key. Key equals most important. For the Gold Quality Award Program, the QAP. What we're looking for in the Quality Award Program is step one, which you've already done. Step one is you identified how you listen to a resident. You said we have management daily meetings, we have care plan meetings quarterly, we have therapy meetings daily, and we have dietary follows up with residents weekly. And you follow up with if there any concerns after 30. You follow up within 3 days if there are any concerns. This is what you used to do. Perhaps, right? Actually, let me do this. If when you're evaluating how you listen to a resident, if you make any changes for the Quality Award Program, we want to hear about it. We want to hear, we used to do it like this, and this, and this, and this. But after evaluating the process, we made an improvement. Maybe we used to just let people go on their own without a script and just go say hello to residents. And then we're like, you know what? There's a better way because we're not sure if everybody's given the right information. Like maybe dietary should talk about the dietary program. Maybe they should talk about an always offered menu. Maybe they should talk about what a select versus a non-select menu is. Maybe the dietary can talk about what time meal services are, what time they get there in the morning, how early they can have coffee, how late they can have coffee, or something like that. Or again, with maintenance on how to get information out there, or how, whatever. And so instead of having this informal process where we just had our senior leaders go meet with somebody, we formalized it by like what we did. We created a script for every single manager to go over the very important things for each department. So we evaluated the way that we listened to our residents and we improved it. That evaluating and improving equals learning. Now, you're not always going to find improvements, right? You may just be evaluating. You're like, no, this is how we've always done it and it works great. We're not changing a thing. Perfect. No worries. But anytime that you have made changes, then for the Quality Award Program, you need to write senior leaders, and then you're going to hit insert the process, listen to residents by, and you're going to say, and you're going to go, we used to, but now, and it's better. Now it's better. All right. Either this was brilliant and it kept your attention, or you fell asleep 4 times and you're wondering why the heck I haven't stopped talking yet. I don't know. Hopefully you found this helpful. Again, I will send you a Google Doc with a bunch of sentence starters, so it'll help you figure out exactly how to go about answering the questions, but you're all on the right track. And so thank you all so much. And let me know if you have any questions.